Well, welcome back to Reimagine. This conference rolls on in January 2021 with so much going on and so many fantastic people to speak with. I'm joined now by Leah Jonas, Head of Global Partnerships at Celsius Network, one of the most exciting companies in the crypto space at the moment. Leah, firstly, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, a pleasure being here. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. So, Leah, we want to start this off with a bit of a personal flair. I want our audience to understand the context of who we're speaking to, why we're speaking to them. So, could you tell us a little bit about your background with Celsius in the crypto blockchain space and what brought you to be here today?
Yeah, for sure. So I've actually been with Celsius for a little over 3 years now. I joined them in January of 2018. It's been a wild ride so far. I was in crypto beforehand, kind of sniffing around, just a little bit curious. I worked in venture and tech sales for 5 years prior. But really caught the bug, and it's kind of one of those things that, once you jump down the rabbit hole, you have no choice but to, follow it and dive right in. So, well, at Celsius, I've hopped around a lot. You wear a lot of hats in an early stage startup. I started off in marketing, but very quickly I moved into business development, and I've helped build that department. A lot of our key initiatives, our APIs, our treasury, our staking program, and yeah, I mean, I've I've loved every single minute of it. It's a wild ride, but there's honestly not a day that I haven't woken up excited to kind of fulfill our mission and continue on the path that Alex has built.
Certainly, a powerful vision that has been built and seems to be reaping some pretty amazing benefits so far, in 2020, 2021. But I want to drill down in a little bit on some of the projects you've spearheaded and some of the sort of initiatives coming out of your section of the company, because you work in global partnerships, and Celsius is fairly well known for having extensive partnerships all across the crypto space. So could you give our audience a little bit of context on how you at Celsius view your partnerships and business operations in that sense?
Yeah, so back in October of 2018, when we were really in the throwing spaghetti at the wall phase, of Celsius, just ideas all over the place and kind of trying to find our niche and grow our brand and our community. One of the things that I went to Alex with was, I said, look, we're great, our platform is great, but there are so many users that use different platforms, exchanges or wallets, custodial and non-custodial, for different reasons. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't get the benefit of passive income and yield on their crypto assets. And it goes with our ethos to not try to box ourselves into just our services, and you have to come to us for our services. We should partner with other platforms and provide all of our product lines through them. And to Alex's credit, he said, just go for it. And so I'd never built a product before or led or spearheaded the product build. But over the course of the last, I guess, 2 years, a little more than 2 years, we've expanded that out, partnered with about 12 different platforms, with many more to come. The program has matured, and we continue to work on offering other APIs for all of our partners and platforms across the ecosystem. Whereas right now it's the interest APIs. I think that will undoubtedly grow in the future. Additionally, we really want to create a comprehensive financial product offering for everybody. So growing treasury program, growing our staking initiative, which ultimately led to our expansion to DeFi, and just really working on what our community wants. I think that's been really the main driver of our success up to this point, is listening to community. every single one of our team members, myself included, is very active on Twitter, is very active in our
Right.
Telegram. We have, our community is honestly incredible. They set up Sunday calls for 2, 3, 4 hours, and they just talk to each other, and employees jump on there all the time, because it's such a critical piece of us growing, is to listen to what they want, and stay on the cutting edge through you know sharing ideas with those that are the most passionate about what we're building.
I want to drill down a little bit more on that notion of community, as you said there, because Celsius CEO Alex Mashinsky, he has done a sort of a fantastic role in defining himself as a CEO that also speaks directly to the community. He's constantly doing AMAs. He's constantly, engaging publicly in various forums with users. And you said that's an ethos that seems to have spread throughout the entire company and throughout all of Celsius Network as a whole. But what role do you think having this sort of community feedback can play in the crypto space as a whole, and in the way Celsius interacts with their community, as opposed to, let's say, I don't know if you really think of these as your competitors, but more traditional banks or more traditional financial services?
That's a great question. And I think it goes twofold, right? Which is, one, we're in a nascent industry, right? So this is really when the foundational brands are being built. And, Alex from day one has always, brought everything back to the community, everything back to what they want. And, I think that that's critical for all companies in the ecosystem to adopt these days, and to kind of follow that trend, because you have just a mass amount of newcomers into the crypto sphere, and you're building, like I said, the foundational brands of the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so having a community first approach will not only put you in a position where you're, the go-to for whatever vertical you're in, but it also, is so refreshing when you come from a traditional, financial, uh, you know, like how you deal with your bank, and how you deal with traditional financial institutions, and you come into a world in which everything's being catered to you, not trying to find shortcuts in order to make the most out of you, as a client. So I think it's not only it's a path that we're following, not only to gain users, and set a precedent for the rest of the industry, but also to educate the general population on what a relationship with your financial institution should be.
Right, and that's a powerful message you talk about. That we're laying the foundations down for those that are used to this, space, and are going to become used to this space as it grows. But I suppose, and I want to twist this a little, thinking about something you just touched on before, that idea of sort of integration between different, exchanges and organizations and businesses within the space. And also about consolidation, because this is a trend that we're seeing across the industry, and many, particularly from an institutional side, will say this is a maturing of the crypto space. So we're consolidating these brands. We're seeing the wheat rise to the top from the chaff. We're seeing whatever metaphor, idiom you want to use. But do you think this is a positive trend for the industry, or do you think there's a risk that in all this consolidating and professionalization, we risk losing the voice of the little investor that started it all?
Right. And yeah, I think that that's always a concern, right, with any consolidation. But I think it's up to the brands and the companies and the platforms, and the firms in the space now, to set a precedent. And I think that will proliferate past the consolidation of the industry. And what I mean by that is, if today we teach those in the community and those coming into the crypto community that they deserve transparency, that they deserve not only transparency, but easy transparency, what it looks like to, not have to dig for blockchain transactions, but, have an easy user interface, that what transparency looks like, giving them that knowledge, giving them, you know, giving them the ability to connect directly with teams, or to at least have, expectation of regular updates and knowledge. It's there for them if they want it. As you begin to educate people and set those expectations for them, I think that they will continue that on, right? That's what we see so much in people that are either, diehard Celsius fans or brand new to Celsius, is, they love that level of transparency and communication from us. And I think that we're not only setting a precedent in what, organization customer relations look like, or organization user relations look like, but we're also holding ourselves accountable with it, right? If you teach them how to do that, if you teach them that this is the level of transparency that they should expect, not only do they take that to the other platforms that they use or the other companies they engage with, but they also hold us accountable. Because as we grow bigger, as the top brands consolidate, people don't forget what you used to do. And if you start falling short on that vision, they hold you accountable. Like they're definitely very vocal about it. Once you've kind of seen the light, it's hard to go back. So I do think that there is a risk as you grow bigger, as with anything, that any consolidation within the ecosystem will start to veer towards a more traditional organization user relationship. But you also have to remember that up to this point, we've never had this type of openness with any products I use. I mean, I can't say that there's any app on my phone that I know who the team is, how to reach them, how, to follow their updates on a regular basis, that they provide, transactional data about, their internal funds. So, if you set it, then that's the counterbalance that I think we need to maintain. And the counterbalance is the accountability that the community demands.
Right, and I think you touch on something so important, and something so important particularly in this current phase we're seeing. Obviously the crypto markets are going through a hype cycle, a bull cycle, or whatever term you want to use. I'm not here to get into that right now, but they're certainly going through a space in which we're seeing a ton of new users flocking into the system, users who don't necessarily have expectations set beforehand, or if they do, are often set in contradiction to what the reality of the market really is and what the interface really is. What role do you think Celsius can play in sort of having a positive experience be the first experience that these new users can have, and in general to helping new users come comfortably into a space that's frankly quite frightening to a lot of people who've never been in crypto before?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that our role in the space today, because our offering is so appealing and is really a gateway, I think, into crypto in a lot of ways, because it's a very motivating, value prop, which is, earn yield on your income, or earn yield on, either stable coins or cryptos. It's our responsibility to make information, knowledge, transparency for the fifth time, accessible, and really make it a friendly opening space to come into, right? Like the ability for someone to do their own due diligence, right? Do your own research. It's not for everybody. There's going to be people who come into the space and want to put $500 in stable coins and earn yield on that and nothing more. But there's this phenomenon that I see, that the more information that you provide, the more that you're open with your users and your community, the more they trust you, whether or not they are the person that digs deep and reads every single document that you provided. But the fact that it's there and it's available, builds that trust. And I think that that trust is something that has really prevented a lot of people from coming into the space in the first place. They don't understand the tech. They don't understand, you know, uh, you know, monetary, you know, theory in the way that, you know, some people in this or some early adopters of cryptos do.
Right.
So I think that it's building that trust, and you build that trust through um, openness and making that knowledge as accessible as possible for those that want it.
Hmm. You know, and as you say, that knowledge is so critical, and knowing who to trust, I suppose, is very critical in a space like this where there's so many voices out there. Unfortunately, not all of them speaking honestly, and others that need to ensure that there is that positivity in the space, especially for those newcomers. So that leads me to my next question, which I suppose is to reflect a little bit on competition in the sort of financial services in the crypto space. Now, you know, Celsius has obviously, you know, proven itself to be a standout in many ways, but there are other competitors out there, whether we talk about the centralized finance competitors such as your BlockFis or your Nexos, or even just the DeFi space as a whole, you know, could be considered a competitor to much of the work you guys are doing. So I guess my question then would be, do you see this space and the competition for financial services in it as a zero-sum game, or is there a chance that rising tides can lift all ships?
Yeah, no, I think that we have barely scratched the surface of the potential, especially for lending. And you know, there's a variety of, like you said, DeFi or CeFi, and you know, they speak to different audiences, and there's definitely some overlap. But I I think it's so, for lack of a better word, silly to fight amongst ourselves over scraps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just sometimes when I see a beef breakout on Twitter here or there, I'm like, Jamie Dimon is sitting there laughing, and you know, if he's probably not even seeing it, but you know, there's, you know, I have some very close contacts in very large financial firms, and it's like we've taken 1% of, you know, what the total global lending market could look like in all the different variations and you know, use cases and applications that this could, you know, bleed into, and we're only stunting ourselves by, you know, saying it's black and white, DeFi, CeFi, this approach, that approach. I think that I I talk to my team every day about, you know, innovative ideas and innovative ways to apply you know, lending and borrowing in this space, especially as the technology continues to grow at a unprecedented rate. Um, yeah, and I think I mean it's the same whether you're looking at lending or any other vertical for that matter. I think what stunted us the most is, you know, people saying that, oh, you know, shaming people who don't hold their own keys. You know,
Right.
you're saying that your route of uh, adoption of crypto is the only way, and I encountered that a lot when I first got into crypto, and
Mm-hmm.
it was this, you know, not company to company, like peer to peer, like this is the only way to go. This is the only coin. This is the only, you know, true way to use crypto, or you know, true way to hold your keys or coins. And if you are in a centralized, you know, wallet like Coinbase, then you know, you're just a noob, and it was dismissive. It's like that's what keeps people out, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not taking into account that, you know, we want a mom that has 5 kids that works 2 jobs to take 10% of, you know, a port like a paycheck, and you know, put it into a stable coin or a crypto. That's what we all want, right? We all
Mm-hmm.
want a mainstream adoption. We're never going to get there if we continue to make it, you know, set the bar so high that it's unapproachable and unwelcoming to new people. And I think that starts with the leaders in the space setting a good example, and it trickles down to, you know, the rest of the ecosystem and users and, you know, believers in crypto to work together to find solutions not just for themselves but for others that, might have a completely different background, completely different life, and might want the simplest experience, and that's it, and never do their research, and like never dig in, but they don't have time for it. Like that's okay too. That's just a different type of approach.
Certainly, but it's funny, even when you just saying the term, if it's you don't hold your keys, not your keys, not your crypto, that immediately tenses me up. It's a minefield of sort of conversation in this space, even still. Although I think you're right in the sense the conversation's shifted. I mean, back in 2017, 18, it was the true OGs are saying this to all the new speculators coming in, and so many got stung, and so many got burned, and so many got caught up in scams, and that did seem to have some weight to it as a truism. But how do you think the market's changed now? I mean, is it just a matter of fidelity? Is it a matter of good actors have proven themselves, or has something actually changed in the market so that idiom of the sort of OG crypto investor is no longer as true as it once was?
Yeah, I think that I don't have a clear answer on that. I think that there's been so many shifting pieces that have led to a much more mature market than it was in 2017. But I think it comes down to there's a lot more people who are willing to explore and share with others what they've done. If you're someone that is diving deep on a project, right? And you're digging in and you're trying to find the holes and you're trying to find out if they're a scam. Like, I believe that it's your responsibility, if you have the knowledge to do that research, to share it. And I've seen that a lot more, right? And it's almost like I've seen a lot of the big voices of influencers or OGs shift from honestly shilling coins to review and dissection of products and services and new technology. Not that wasn't going on before, but I think I've seen it a lot more. And that's something that I can point to that's like, that is directly, I believe, responsible for legitimacy in the space, right? If you come into the space for the first time in 2017 and the biggest guys on Twitter or, these Telegram chats, and they're just shilling, whatever coin, they prefer, whether it's a scam or not, that's all you have access to, right? That's the main content you're being fed. And of course there's going to be bad actors and you're going to get burned. When you come into this space and you have people who really know their stuff diving deep on some of the biggest trends or technology trends, brands, cross comparing of different platforms, then that's the content you're going to listen to. And I think that it's just honestly more viable like it's more substantial content that they're coming into nowadays versus back in the olden days.
Certainly, and I guess a more reviewed, more professionalized, more understood. You can understand the tiers of content from the local guy producing something in his home, which might be fantastic work, to a full blown sort of conference and sort of backed idea. But I want to pivot slightly because I know a big part of Celsius's sort of overarching plan and things that have been sort of hinted at towards 2021 is working a lot with emerging markets as well. Obviously we're not just so much attention gets focused on developments, whether they be innovative or regulatory in Europe and North America, but the emerging market space is something that's so fascinating to me because that's where crypto has a chance to really make fundamental differences, in places where they don't have the existing banking infrastructure or financial infrastructure. Tell us a little bit about how you guys have been working in those markets and what some of the sort of developments have been there.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think that from a future plan standpoint, there's a lot of markets that we're looking at that will, start to come to fruition over the next year. At least from my point of view in partnerships, I think one of the most interesting things is looking at emerging markets and their application of stablecoins. I think it's really, there was always lip service paid to, getting Bitcoin or cryptos into those markets, into, places like Argentina, have, volatile currencies. But I think that when you look at stables and the ability for people to lock in value in the same way that they might do now on the street when they exchange, their, rubles for a dollar or whatever it might be, and but they're paying a 20% markup, and they have to hold that cash. I think that this is a proliferation of being able to provide certainty and really peace of mind in an easy, fast and scalable way. Now that all comes down to what ends up happening with global adoption of stables, and how that looks. But I think that these emerging markets, obviously, it's getting the adoption there, it's getting the infrastructure there, but then it really comes down to building for those markets. And to be quite honest, I don't think that there's anyone, that I know of in the space, other than a select few companies focused specifically on emerging markets, that are really building with that in mind. They might be looking to expand there, but they're not building with those consumers in mind, because a lot of the westernized world has never catered to those consumers, right? There's very few companies. So I think, overall, we're looking to expand there. I think from my standpoint, we have a long ways to go to really cater to those consumers, and those users in the right way, not try to, essentially provide a service that is applicable to us and think it's going to be applicable to them. But there's a lot of really cool ways to do that, micro loans and pool financing and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that it will be a really interesting year. And I think that there's going to be a big learning curve in the industry as a lot of these top tier companies reach the point in which they can expand successfully. But then they have to learn that regional user base.
Right. Yeah, and it's such a powerful point you raised there. I mean, I even think about, so I was in Dubai recently, and they were dealing with the remittance market. The remittances market is such a huge market. They're obviously foreign workers from all across the world trying to get money back home, supporting families, sometimes supporting whole villages on the salaries that they're earning, there in the UAE. And I just sat there thinking, so many of these guys are still using Western Union transfers or whatever else, and paying 10, 20, even more percent, on every transfer. And that seems crazy to me when, I'm sitting there saying, I know of a system you can be using that's way cheaper, way easier, and, you could be earning additional yield, you can be earning additional things without ever having to be banked. Are these markets that you guys are going to be able to tap into? Do you think there's a space for it? As you said, I know you said it's early days, but what can be done?
So I'll put it this way. Celsius always took the road less traveled in lending, right? And what I mean by that is, I can tell you that in the early days, from the first dollar deposited to the first 50 million or 100 million is the hardest, right? Because you have to be paying out interest, you have to be lending that out. You really have to, the very, very beginning is the most difficult, establishing yourself in the institutional market, so on and so forth. But Alex always drove home, we have to be better than bank. We can't be the same, and we can't be worse. And what that meant was, we never had lockups, we never had withdrawal fees, we never had minimums, we never had maximums, right? So that was a lot harder than some of the approach that some of the other lending companies took, which was, let's go after whales, right? What's the quickest way to $1 million? It wasn't going after the everyday Joe that could deposit $5. It was going after the whales, and a lot of lending companies took that approach. But because we took the approach that we did, we have, 150,000 users, probably more at this point, on the platform. And, you know, we are the largest retail facing, lending brand, that has I think, I believe that we're still the only, lending platform that still has no minimums, no withdrawal fees, no lockups, right? Which I think is what I'm getting back to your point, is that we always took the road less traveled to cater to those that are kind of left behind in the financial system, those that people don't care about, the guy that can deposit $10 here, $20 there. And I think that as long as we can continue that ethos and, maintain that, that kind of heart and soul of Celsius, approaching emerging markets with that in mind will allow us to, um, far outpace, any other lender that might have taken the easier route, which is, going after the larger whales and depositors and institutions, because we've already done it once, right? We already took the approach of going for, the general population versus, the high net worth. So will it be easy? No. I don't think anything innovative ever is easy, but I think that we have a lot of the original team members that still are with Celsius, and, we're just going to have to iterate again and cater to that market and take the approach that we did before, which is, it's worth our time to learn, that consumer base and cater to them, with products that further develop their financial freedom.
It's a wonderful ethos, and I must say, to be totally frank, it's one that seems to be working for Celsius on the whole. I want to touch on the amazing success that has been had by Celsius on paper, and in stark fact, the Cell token over the course of 2020. There's no denying it. It did a pretty incredible run there. Anyone can go and check out the charts. It's something damn impressive. Now a top 30 cryptocurrency by market cap in the world. Tell us a little bit about, do you guys feel like you're now standing on top of the great crypto hill, or are this still midway through the marathon? How does it feel after such a stark run?
Yeah, not to be a dead horse, but I continue to go back to the community because they're behind that, right? I think that we always took the approach of sustainable growth. We waited over a year to list, after our ICO. We, were very, very adamant that we weren't going to pay listing fees or exchange fees. And, Alex was always like, the token economic model will prove out itself. We don't need exchanges, to boost that. And I think that, at the time it sounded crazy because we had all these people that were like, list here, do this. But at the end of the day, Alex most times lists 5 years in the future. And, a lot of that came to fruition. And what we see in tracking it, and, people can go do this themselves through our Telegram and, so on and so forth, is that there's just this influx and belief from the community, which at the end of the day, has driven a lot of, the growth in the Cell token and the maintenance of these unbelievable support levels. It felt surreal. I can say that, I have friends and family that own Cell, and they would call me and they'd be like, is this sustainable? Is this sustainable? And I'd be like, I'm working. I can't talk about this right now. But, as you track it, you realize that the underpinning of this growth is the community's belief in the token. And I think that it's, the correlating metrics that's the strongest. Even if you see dips, right? If you saw a dip or a retraction, go look at the Telegram. Go look at, we have a whole community on Twitter, and you'll see that doesn't falter that fundamental base at all. And just like I used to say with Bitcoin when I was trying to convince my friends and family, like a crazy person, to get into it. Um, I used to say, they'd say, well, what if it goes to zero? I said, I can count at least 15 people that I know that would never let it go to zero. Right. And that's how I would convince them. I'd be like,
Right.
that's all that matters. Right. Like there would be people that I knew that would be buying if it hit $100 or if it dropped 10% from where it is today, or even 2%. So I think that that is the fundamental underpinning of, consistency and real substantial growth. And Celsius is just amazingly lucky to have, our community that continues to provide new users with information and be very welcoming. Um, and also giving them the option to earn and sell or not earn and sell has been something that, I mean, we've seen a very substantial amount of our community earning it, and it continues to grow. So those are really good indicators that, we've built something that will last, and that, our community believes in the long term.
Certainly a powerful backing of the community in and of itself. Leah, I want to ask you a question now. As we stand, January 2021, it's always a great time to reflect forward and think about the future a little bit. And as we're in such an exciting time in the crypto space, we already touched on this a little bit with new users coming in. But if you could boil it down to one major piece of advice that you would give to any new users coming into the space, something that you wish you might have known back in the day, or that's relevant, actually more importantly perhaps to 2021 right now. What advice could you give?
That's such a tough question.
I like putting people on the spot. All right.
I know.
I want to get your
There's
true
so much
reaction.
advice I would have given myself. New users coming to space. I think, we've hired a lot of people that are, OGs in crypto and outside of crypto. And, I love talking to them because they give me a lot of really good ideas about kind of taking myself out of the bubble that we live in. And one thing that I always tell them is, to stay curious always, because first of all, there's a lot of, in the Hindu tradition, there's that saying, many paths to Brahma, right? There's a lot of different rabbit holes that can make that click for you. So, continue to stay curious. But also, I think, be gentle with yourself. Like, I have a lot of people that come in that are like, I know nothing. And I'm like, there's so many people in this space that feel like they know nothing, and that they're, they get discouraged by, the vastness of what this can be, right? When you really click into it, you're like, wow, like this could touch everything. Like this could change this and this and this. And, I think that, being gentle, going slow, letting your curiosity lead the way is the best way to go. You're not going to come in, you're not going to be able to figure everything out all at once. Not everything's going to make sense. But sometimes people get so overwhelmed that it's almost a deterrent. And I think that, realizing that I'm still learning every day, and I'm still teaching myself every day. And that there's people that have been in it way longer than me that do the same thing. It's a lifelong practice, and it's, just like anything, you have to, continue to kind of feed that passion, that knowledge. So, find your rabbit hole, but if you stumble along the way, don't get discouraged. Everybody is on the exact same level, to be honest.
Well, Leah Jonas, sage words of wisdom. I think something we could all take into account, whether we're brand new to the space or very experienced. Leah, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Always valuable to get these, wise words and different perspectives all across the space. What you guys are doing at Celsius is fascinating and intrepid stuff. I look forward to seeing how 2021 plays out. So much more in the future. So for everyone watching, stick with us at Reimagine. There's so much more good stuff to come. Leah, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.